Hi guys, so there has recently, and when I say recently I mean about 4 hours ago, for me now recording this, there has been a second press release on the matter regarding gel blasters being classed as imitation firearms within the state of South Australia. I'm going to watch the video live, and I think what I'm going to do is just break it down. I kind of want to break down body language as well, so let's begin.
All good?
Yep, thank you.
Rolling, thanks Steve.
Good afternoon everyone, my name's Stephen Howard, I'm the Officer in charge of Firearms Branch. The reason we called a press conference today was just to clarify a few points, as there's been quite a few comments in the media over the last couple of days.
I'd like to just stop it for a second here and rectify his opening statement because it's slightly incorrect. The reason he's called this press conference is because they are already shitting themselves at the level of backlash that they are getting from not only their state but others, and it will paint a very clear picture on what is wrong with Australia in current times. Essentially, they just pass new legislations all the time so that they can avoid the hurdles of democracy. Let's continue.
We're also working to inspect premises of those venues that wish to get themselves licensed and become approved venues for gel blaster activities.
They're trying to streamline the process to say, hey guys, look, we understand that, you're hard done by here and we want to make things easier on you. It's probably likely that when he had a discussion with the Small Business Commissioner, this was a compromise that they decided to come to. I'm guessing that SAPOL wouldn't back down, and the Small Claims Commissioner said, well, you need to do something because this is not reasonable, and so they're trying to streamline all of this.
There's been some commentary that this has taken the industry by surprise. The importation of gel blasters was suspended by Firearms Branch in February, and I've met with a number of retailers, both here in police headquarters and also at their shops. I've met with the Shooters Union, the Australian Gel Blasters Association, the South Australian Gel Blaster Association. I've had dealings with the Commissioner for Small Business in relation to complaints about the suspension of importation. So for people to say it's come as a surprise is a surprise.
So basically what he's saying here is, we suspended imports in February, and so you should have known. You had adequate notice. SAPOL did not give any direction to anybody within South Australia that this was coming until 24 hours before we were all effectively jobless and, I guess you could say, oppressed. So basically what he's saying here is that when they suspended imports into South Australia and stopped giving the B709A permits for import of gel blasters in February of this year, that was adequate notice. I want to point out that I've been working closely with somebody who is regularly in contact with two of the major associations for gel blasters. I also know a lot of the South Australian business owners, though they probably don't know who I am while I operate this channel. The point that I'm trying to raise here is they have been communicating, that is correct. However, the South Australian Police at no point gave any indication that they were going to deem them firearms. They never gave any indication that they were going to do everything that they've done. They never gave them any indication at all, and it was only a few weeks ago that they were saying, look, we want them to remain toys and we're working on some form of regulation for them, and it's likely going to happen. Look, that's been in a lot of their statements, but there was never any indication that what happened was going to come to pass. So while this statement may be shallow on the surface in truth, the fact of the matter is they never gave any direct answers, and they never gave any inkling or any hints that this was going to be what happened. Up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were still saying, look, we're just trying to work out some regulations for them. Everyone was sort of looking forward to them adopting the same system that Queensland has, which is working. But rather than looking at that model, they went for something that made them a little extra buck and gave them a bit of a power trip, in my personal opinion. So I don't think that that's a sufficient excuse or argument whatsoever. The fact of the matter is you had all of the time during your communication with the relevant bodies within the gel blaster community to initiate some kind of admission that this was going to happen so that people could prepare for that in due time. Instead, what you did, there's no surprise for you, my friend. I'm sorry, but, people saying that it's come as a surprise to you is bullshit. It's a fucking joke.
As you can see, since Thursday, we've had more than 100 gel blasters surrendered.
Now, you might notice that in a previous video, we actually had this radio interview, which is content that isn't really available readily online anywhere else. In that radio interview, the figures were pretty much given by both relevant authorities that had conversations with the radio presenter, that there were probably in excess of 350,000 gel blasters in the South Australian state alone, and not 60,000. I'd also like to point out on top of that, you may have seen the video of a large amount of those blasters from that 100 that have been handed in, going across the counter at Adelaide Police Headquarters, and you would probably notice that those were children handing over their toys because they were taken by a selfish, thoughtless and careless action made by South Australian Police.
And I thank those who have surrendered them so far, but if my import records are correct, there's 62,000 imported into South Australia, and there's still quite a few to be handed in. So that people have got two choices. They either surrender their gel blasters under Amnesty, or they get licensed.
Okay, you guys actually have three choices. Now, the third choice that you actually have is to just hold on to them until right at the end of the amnesty. The reason I say that is because there's a lot going on right now, and we may yet see them back down. Unfortunately, it's likely that you guys are going to end up with firearms licenses anyway before it is beaten, but I do have full confidence that this will be completely beaten and overturned. In saying that, I would still apply for my license now. As much as that might come as a surprise to you guys, because I strongly am against having a license for a gel blaster, I am pro-gun, and I see absolutely no harm in applying for a license and ticking the box for gel blaster and paintball and firearms. And I'm going to just say right now that you guys can easily get a membership with the SSAA. I don't know how it works in South Australia, but in Queensland that is considered a genuine reason to own a firearm. So if you were interested in shooting as a sport or for hunting or anything like that, this is your opportunity to go and apply for that license and have that there as a safeguard just in case things don't go in our way.
They've got until the 7th of April to use the amnesty that relates specifically to gel blasters. And I just want to remind everyone that there is no compensation for the surrender of gel blasters.
Okay, so he's reminding us all now that there is no compensation for the surrender of gel blasters. That stinks. It stinks.
As with any firearm surrendered under the ongoing amnesty that's detailed in the Firearms Act. There's been some concern that people getting gel blaster licences or firearm licences will lead to an increase in firearms in the South Australian community. That's not correct. When you apply for a firearms licence relating specifically to gel blasters, you can only own and possess a gel blaster.
Okay, so he's watched my video. That's kind of flattering. Yeah, if you apply for a license for the purpose of gel blasters, you can only own and possess a gel blaster. That's absolutely 100% correct. It's very transparent, but it's a false statement. The reason being is because when you apply for your license, you can still tick those boxes for firearms. And as I said before, go and get yourself a membership with the SSAA. Trust me, these guys back the gel blaster community and they will be backing us in the future. So it doesn't help to be putting a little bit of pocket money into a membership there, because all those fees do go back to fighting cases in court when things like this happen for the shooters community. I will say now that I highly, highly recommend you make everything that he says here completely wrong. Why shouldn't they own guns? It's the same process. I'm telling you right now that 98.89999% or more, 99.9% of South Australians who own gel blasters are responsible human beings, are more than capable of owning and handling a firearm without doing something completely irresponsible with it. You're going to be implementing safe storage anyway for gel blasters, so they're going to need a safe. Personal opinion, guys, just Do it. Don't let him be right. Get a gun. Be responsible about it, but get one. See how they feel about that.
We scrutinise each licence application carefully, and if someone were to vary that licence to get another sort of firearm, they would have to demonstrate a genuine need for that firearm, and we would also scrutinise that carefully. We take our responsibility in relation to the regulation of firearms very seriously. If a person deals in gel blasters outside the Amnesty conditions or uses their gel blaster outside the Amnesty conditions, they're committing offences. And for a dealer, you're looking at $30,000 fine or up to 7 years of imprisonment. For an individual, that's $10,000 fine or 4 years of imprisonment.
Okay, that's a pretty interesting statement. So what if somebody's ordered something from a company before the announcement and it arrives now after the amnesty? Does that make a company in another state liable to be charged as a dealer if this individual is caught?
Now, as I've said previously, gel blasters are defined as firearms within the firearms because they compress air to fire a projectile and they can cause injuries.
It's pretty funny, mate, because I can tell you right now that I've read your act and I've read the Gazette by the registrar, and you are so fucking wrong that it makes me smile when you say that.
But also concerning is that they look like firearms. This is a gel blaster. This is a SAPOL issue firearm. Now you tell me, what's the difference? There are a number of firearms on this table, and there are a number of gel blasters. Tell me which are which. Because this is the concern for operational police, is that they confront people with gel blasters that look like a firearm that fires lethal bullets, not a non-lethal firearm that fires gel blaster balls, or could be the paintballs.
And I can tell you right now that without any difficulty, I identified every single firearm on that table versus gel blasters. If the police in South Australia can't tell the difference between those, my honest response is, unless you're making a split-second decision, you'd have to be completely fucking incompetent not to know the difference.
Any questions?
It says on here at this time you won't be compensating people, but is that something you're looking at in the future?
You talked about 62,000 gel blasters. Are they gel blasters that have come into the state over a period of time, over 12 months or?
Over 2 years.
So 62,000 have come into the state?
So to import gel blasters from overseas, you must get the Australian Border Force categorise them as a prohibited import, and you must get jurisdictional permission to import them into the state. So they class them as an imitation firearm. Prior to the declaration being made and us then suspending importation, they were allowed to be imported.
Let me explain something to you guys in detail. Gel blasters were not deemed firearms in February when the importation stopped. They were not deemed firearms until a few days ago. So how it works in Queensland is the Queensland Police Service do not have any right to refuse you a B709A permit for importation of a firearm, or in this case, a gel blaster. The reason they can't refuse that is legally, as long as you fill that out correctly, you are importing into the state legally. It's still legal within the state, so you can do that, and they're not allowed to decline it. So I believe that they were already acting outside of the law when they stopped allowing permits in February, because I have a feeling that they may be liable from there. And as a business, you can sort of project the income that you would have had if your importations had have been approved. And you might be able to still sue them for damages, at least for that period of time.
So with the TAFE course, will that accompany the license? Would you have to take the TAFE course to get the license? How does that work? Is that compulsory?
Yeah, so with any firearms licence, you must do a safety course, and TAFE provide that safety course at the moment. So we go through probity, you apply for your licence, We then see if you're a fit and proper person to hold a firearms licence. If you meet that criteria, we then send you a letter saying, okay, you can now go do a firearms safety course, which is currently run by TAFE.
And how much will that cost the person who wants to?
TAFE haven't landed on a price yet, but they're looking at, so a normal safety course is 2 days, a gel blaster paintball safety course would be a day.
So why didn't you consider this when you first announced that you were going to be banning gel blasters, or that you'd need a licence to use a gel blaster? Why didn't you announce that last week when you made this announcement?
Because we've been working with TAFE over the last week on this.
Sure.
Okay, I want to point out the body language there. Well, not so much the body language, but what just happened. He choked on that. That was a scripted answer. I'm pretty good at picking that kind of shit up with somebody. The fact of the matter was that there is absolutely no way that they were working with TAFE from that point. That's a load of bullshit. They're doing it now because they're trying to make it effectively easier and less painful for people to apply for these licenses. They're trying to play the good guys, but the fact of the matter is the entire situation is based on the fact that they wrote a gazette that said that gel blasters use compressed air to fire gel balls, and therefore they are now classed as an imitation firearm.
You said earlier that that it shouldn't have been a surprise to the industry that you banned it. Some people have said that they had 12 hours. They had 12 hours notice. Is discussion something separate to an actual decision where they had so many hours to prepare for?
Once we've made the decision that they're firearms, we can't have them then selling them knowing that they're firearms and selling them to the unsuspecting public, who will then be told, oh, okay, you've now bought a gel blaster 24 hours ago, but you've now got a licence, but they didn't know at that time. It's the decision we made. This is the course we're going to take. And
so for some business owners, 12 hours, that is a shock to them.
Yeah, it would be a surprise, but I have said quite often to the retailers that I've dealt with, and also on media, back in April when we launched the self-audit, these are firearms and they should be regulated.
So most of the retailers in South Australia have been reached out to before this press conference. Some of them I already know personally and I've touched bases with. They've been very busy, but to my knowledge, from the information that's available to me and from the conversations I've had with members of associations and some business owners, he's lying. Nobody had a conversation with this man where he said that they're firearms and they should be regulated. It didn't happen. These guys are supposed to serve you.
Did you consider a situation where these businesses could still operate their business, but the people coming in could only use a gel blaster at that business and not have it at home?
Yes, and that's really what the paintball model is that you can only use a gel blaster in a authorised venue. So we've based it on paintball, and really, if we were to give gel blasters, I don't think it's right to give gel blasters an unfair advantage over paintball.
Why? I don't think it's an unfair advantage at all. They're going to be in the same class of license, and one's cheaper than the other, and the one that's cheaper than the other also doesn't leave these giant whopping fucking bruises all over your body.
What's the clarification around the type of sort of gel blaster licence that they'll be given? Is it different to a Category A?
Okay, so with a firearms licence, there's Category A. Within the category there are subcategories, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So there's a category for target shooting, hunting, and then we've got paintball gel blaster as Category 4. So you can apply for a Category A licence with the subcategory of 4 only, and that means you can only use gel blasters.
Go and get your SSAA membership. Go and tick the target shooting box. Go and tick the gel blaster box. Go and do the full course. What you'll find is that some of those higher end gel blasters that were unavailable to you guys in South Australia are more expensive than a nice, enjoyable firearm. South Australian police are forcing you to get one anyway. I'm just saying.
So someone who has a Category A, would they need the 4 as well?
They may do. They might only have it for hunting and target shooting, so then they would have to apply for a variation to their licence.
So
and we would look at that application and scrutinise, why do you want this? And they'd have to justify it to us why, as with any licence variation.
The Small Business Commissioner was calling on the government and SAPOL last week to start discussions about how you can reimburse these businesses who had to shut down overnight. Is that something that you've considered?
Oh, that's not for me to comment on.
That's not for me to comment on. Well, you already said no.
Can you guarantee that everyone's going to have a licence within that 6 months? Because some people are saying that it takes up to 8 months to get a licence.
And in terms of the legal definition of firearm, you're certain that these meet it? I think
Yes.
there's been some pushback.
Yeah, we've had it. We've had them looked at by ballisticians, and we've had other expert advice verifying their advice. So we're confident.
Okay, blatant lie. So I don't know if you guys know, but to do a ballistics test, you basically crimp the ammunition, check sort of the force it can withstand and how hard it is, and that's how they can define certain things like steel BBs and shot and stuff like that as an ammunition. A gel ball just can't pass that test. Also, there is something to do with the chemical composition of it as well. So that's bullshit. He just completely and blatantly lied about that. There's already precedence that wipes that flaw with that statement. I can't understand why you would answer it that way. You're pretty confident, mate. Yeah, we'll see how confident you are.
What happens to those outstanding 62,000 gel blasters that are out in the community if
Well,
they're not handed in?
Yeah, we don't know if they've on-sold them to other jurisdictions. So all I can do is ask for the community to surrender their gel blasters if they're not going to get licensed.
Because 100 isn't a lot out of 62,000.
It's only the start.
Look at that. Smug motherfucker. It's only the start. There's still a lot that can be done. I know this has been a long one. And if you're still here with me at the end of this video, thanks for coming along for the ride. Thank you for fighting.